Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It is time to have a look at another set of leaks when it comes to War Thunder. Christmas leaks or New Year leaks, depending on how you feel about it. But this actually comes from a decal. Now, Gaijin has actually done this before with previous years, where they release a decal for the new year. This one is part of the GE boxes. If you want to purchase a bunch of GE boxes to get, access to the kind of hidden prizes that are in them, make sure to use my partner link to get the GE. But also, at the same time, they have hidden a bunch of vehicles in the decal itself. So what we're going to do in this video, we're going to go through what those vehicles are, and also what to look forward to in 2025. There is a bunch of stuff that's going to be happening in 2025. It's going to be a banger year and a massive expansion of specifically air and also other areas of the game, with naval getting some even bigger beasts. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The first vehicle we're having a look at is the Su-30, specifically the Su-30SM, which is the vehicle that was leaked a little bit ago that we've already talked about. This is another further development of the Su-27, just like stuff like the Su-34 and the Su-33 are, which we already have in the game, so it wouldn't be a surprise to see the Su-30 as well. The SM specifically is a large upgrade over the standard variant of the Su-30, and it's also a vehicle that has been farmed out to a lot of different countries, meaning that it could come in many different forms and also variants in the game itself, meaning that I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy it. But basically what you're getting is another very, very modern kind of Russian superiority fighter, which also has access to multi-role capabilities. It has a very advanced radar. It also would get access to the most modern air-to-air weaponry that the Russians would have, and also air-to-ground stuff as well, since it is a multi-role vehicle. It wouldn't be too different from some of the other things that we've seen in the game, specifically stuff like the Su-27 and also the Su-30s in terms of flight performance, but it could easily be a vehicle that they add in, which gives them access to better active radar homing missiles, which is something that many people have been asking for. It could also get better all-aspect IR missiles in the form of more variants of the R-73 and also some insane variants of the R-27, which is the one to actually watch out for. A lot of the other parts of it are just slight upgrades over the standard Su-27 that we have in the game, but it still has the 30mm, it still has the Saturn engines, and still should probably have most of the same flight capabilities, but extra ordnance that will be very powerful. There's also a vehicle for South Africa, the Badger, the good old Badger IFV. This is an 8-wheeled infantry fighting vehicle, and it's very similar to a lot of the other ones that we've seen in the game recently. It's actually developed off the Patria itself, which is something we've also seen, at least the hull of the Patria in the Swedish tech tree, and also the German side of things is very similar to it as well. But it's basically this big old box IFV with 8 wheels on it, a pretty decently powerful engine, but the difference between the Badger and also the Patria is this one should have a bit more protection and also more modified, of course, for a South African service. This means that it will probably end up in the British tech tree with part of the South African sub-tech tree. But the interesting thing about it is there is a bunch of different variants of the Badger, just like there are other IFVs that are around. There's a mortar variant, but the one we'll probably get is the one which mounts the Ingwe, which we have in game on other South African vehicles, including the ZT3A2. But there is also a variant which just has a 30mm autocannon on it, which I'm guessing will be the one that goes around. So, you know how we have similar massive autocannon vehicles. Think about the VBCI that just got added. This is kind of the South African variant of it, so it would be really cool to see and have a lot of modern features. And one of the coolest things about this is it's actually designed and developed to replace the Ratel, which we obviously have a lot of in the game. The battleship that you see in front of you is another quad-cannoned battleship, which is probably the Richelieu, which is the battleship from, once again, France. A very similar setup to the Dunkirk class, apart from it's bigger, it's badder, and it's got a ton of interesting features to it. This has 2 quad turrets on it, so it has 8 guns. Once again, 15-inch guns. They did consider adding 16-inch guns to this thing to deal with the Littorio class battleships, which was the whole point of building the Dunkirks and also the Richelieu class, but they decided to scale it down because of, hey presto, the Washington Naval Treaty turns up once again, which is always funny. My favorite thing about this vehicle is it was designed with the Washington Naval Treaty in mind, which limited vehicles to about 35k tons. So of course this vehicle was 43,000 tons, which is somehow not obviously there. The standard version of it, though, before its refit, because it was refit, was 37,000, but that was standard. That wasn't when it was actually loaded, so that was more nearer to 44,000. So obviously missing out on the naval treaty. This vehicle also had a bunch of 6-inch guns, had a bunch of 100mm guns, 37s, and also some Hotchkisses around the place. The biggest difference between this and the Dunkirk that we have in the game would be its armor is slightly different. It has a 330mm belt, 170mm main deck, and also this thing has a ridiculous refit, which keeps the major guns, has the 152mm as well, which is the 6-inch guns, also keeps those 100mm anti-aircraft guns, but adds 56 40mm Bofors and 48 20mm Oerlikons. So basically becomes an AA battleship, which I'm sure many people would enjoy. So this will be after the Dunkirk, it will be better than it will be badder than it, and it will be bigger than it. For Britain, there's also a tracked AA, which you can see. This is the tracked Rapier. Now, the Rapier is a missile system, or, well, I suppose a missile, which was designed by the British to replace their gun AAs, which shows how crazy this kind of step-up was. So, in the 1970s, the British were still using the Bofors, the Bofors 40mm, in order to defend the skies. And in 1971, they introduced the Rapier missile system. So quite a large upgrade in terms of dealing with general threats. The actual missile itself is also pretty good. It has a decent speed of Mach 3. It also is SACLOS, which is really interesting to see, and has a tracking radar attached to it. The only real question is how they'll model it into the game, because that's always been a little bit finicky in terms of how they're going to add it in. There's also the bit of an odd part, because you can technically add a bunch of pieces to this thing in terms of its systems and in terms of which variants of the actual kind of vehicle they add in, because the Rapier missile itself won't change that much, but the systems around it will, and it'll be interesting to see how they kind of add those in. But the main thing is the Rapier missile is coming, which is pretty cool. We also have the classic American vehicle that was obviously going to be the next one they were going to add, which is the A-18. This is the Hornet, and we've talked about it so many times now, I don't know if we need to go through it again. But basically, it's a multi-role combat vehicle designed for the naval side of things for America. It's good old McDonnell Douglas at its best when designing, building, and going through this thing. It would have access to many different weapon systems, depending on which one they wanted to add. You know, the fact is, just like a lot of American vehicles, like the F-15E we recently got, this one is designed to carry everything. Sidewinders, AMRAAMs, ASRAAMs, IRISTs, which is always hard for me to say, stuff like Mavericks, and of course HARMs, and all of the different bombs that you can ever think of in the world. The crazy thing about it is it also has a ridiculous amount of hard points on it, which is something that I'm sure many people will enjoy when it comes in. The vehicle also has a very powerful radar system. It uses the Hughes APG-73, and as I said, we've talked about this vehicle many times, and I'm sure people will enjoy it when it comes in. The major thing that this vehicle will bring is the ability to do anything, which, when it comes to War Thunder, is pretty powerful at the end of the day. And then we have another savior for America, the XM246. Now this was another vehicle that was designed alongside other vehicles like the Sergeant York that we have in the game to be able to fill a gap that the American ground forces had in the 1970s. Basically, they ran into an issue. Their anti-aircraft defenses were very much outdated. You had stuff like the M163, the MIM-72. They weren't able to deal with the threats and the evolution of aircraft that turned up. So, of course, they sent out a bunch of requirements, and businesses came back with their proposals. One of them was the Sergeant York, which we already have in the game, the M247. Another one was provided by General Dynamics, which is the XM246. Now this is much similar to a Gepard. It uses an M48 tank chassis, so same as the M247, but it actually has two 35mm cannons, the KDA cannons, and also has a search and also a track setup with it too. So this has a really weird bulbous turret with a really weird radar on the back of it, and also centrally mounted 35s instead of what you see from the standard marksman turret on the Chieftain Marksman, or, you know, on the Itzva, or even like the Gepard, which have wider guns. This one is much closer together, meaning that your line of fire is a lot tighter, which is interesting. But yeah, so this is just a marriage of a Gepard, a M48, and also some bulbous chungus stuff too. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.